was just thinking of something else. Just got another idea brainstorm. When you got anything that's not a speaker or a sub bass, whatever, and it might be it could be anything like from a refrigerator, a simple mains transformer on something else other than anything to do with audio, and if it's audible and such, and if you were to play a sine wave out from a speaker and such, and then you match the level, so it's very difficult to do. You need microphones, RTA. You need multi-microphone audio mixer, so on and so forth. You can put microphones near what it is. You can just about hear the sound audibly, but if you try raising the mic gain too high, you pick up too much. So you've got to put it near to the source, and then the other microphone maybe say near to where the speaker is. Have a third microphone that's near where your position is. If you put sine wave on, because you can see the frequency of what the humming is, whatever, if it is what a transform thing that's kind of slightly malfunctioning, so it's a bit loudish, so to speak. You get the signal, you get a kind of waveform kind of moving like this sort of thing when you put the other the sine wave on it, even though the sine wave from the split would be very steady, and then it would be kind of modulating like that, so to speak, theoretically. That's giving me a thought of something or other. Liquid smoke, yes, liquid smoke. Geez. Getting an idea. I'm getting some ideas bouncing around. X, Y, and Z, inside out, turned around, back to front, and in a parallel universe all at the same time. So I'm getting some good thoughts here, but wow. Maybe I should have been a scientist, but nah. You don't want to be a scientist. You don't want to be a scientist. Bad ideas sometimes. I don't need to explain the details. But I'm getting some good ideas just by looking at the smoke thing. Just getting total inspiration idea. Oh yes, because he tasks me. He's very tasked. Well, I wouldn't blame him. I don't blame him if he's that disgruntled. Never bothered to come back and check on us. Nah. Laser. That's not laser, that's infrared. See that bit turning? That's LED. But that little bit, that pulse there, you see that pinky colour. That's IR, infrared. That one's going 101010. They all do these different code sort of things, like pattern things. Not sure if I could use IR on sub bass. Laser IR. Just looking at more ways to try and, because you go to a cinema. I'll tell you, the most unusual one is High Wycombe. I mean, from what I had the telephone conversation I had, this is decades ago now, decades. Um, the guy on the phone that I was talking to, he said, I said, how many sub basses are in that THX auditorium? And he was going to say, let me have a think. He says, I think there are two. I say, two? I was kind of like, I'm not sure how many screen channel they had and how many bass bins for the screen channels, because usually it could be anything from 15 bass drivers per screen channel, or it could be 15 bass drivers per screen channel, like the Empire Leicester Square was 4 of them, 5 screen, 8 sub bass for the size of the auditorium. If there was only 2, then yeah. If they had 5 screen, because they would have had a CP200, but whether they had actual 5 screen, I don't know. Because sometimes you could have just run 3 screen, and you know, because you may not get many, say like 70mm prints that are going to be format 41. That's on the encoding sort of noise reduction thing and such, but there's still 5 screen Todd AO. But it's really incredible to think that there was only so many speakers in that THX screen, and it was absolute out of this world. It would blow any home theatre in the USA completely out the water, totally out the water. In fact, kind of like that. It's because the way it was designed and how many engineers, know this, know that, and where to, and probably a little bit of trial and error putting it together, because it was absolute stellar. And I believe it was also voted, or something, so someone told me, voted the 8th best THX cinema on the face of the planet. Not even an IMAX. Even an IMAX or a Limax today would even come near close to it. IMAX based pussy, child's play compared to what I have felt. Flipping heck. And I mean, even on the softest sound of the soundtrack pressing against my body, and when it goes really high in the dynamics, it's like I don't know, it's like someone sat on your chest. That's like kind of some equivalent to something like G-Force, and yet it didn't hurt the ears. I can't fathom that. It was perfect. But it takes special engineering. You got to really have JBL speakers. You can't mess around with something else. You got to have the JBL, because if the JBL was doing that over 30 years ago, 34 years ago, 33 years ago when I saw it at High Wycombe in 1990, 34 years ago at the Empire Leicester Square. You'd think digital technology and all this digital soundtrack today, if you had heard that at Wycombe, you would come out totally depressed, thinking, how the heck did they do that? Good engineering, I think. That's engineering. Of course, you do it in a small room. You got a lot of things to solve. You don't want it too boomy. You don't want it too harsh or at certain frequencies. Where it's like, I think that frequency around there, that needs to be lowered down a little bit, or maybe it does, or maybe something altered in the room. you know, something needs to be adjusted so you feel the frequencies from the lowest going all through up to the mid bass range and feeling it against your body. And that's quite a lot of amplifier power being used, and probably the safety margin, so it won't clip, so it's got a bit of headroom. But the amplifier power, probably talking JBL Uri 6290 amplifiers, which were usually typically common in most cinemas around that time. There were Crown, no, maybe not even QSC amplifiers around that time. Most commonly JBL Uri 6290s. And finding those amplifiers today, even on eBay, in good condition, and you know, because some of them look so rough, it's like they've been dragged behind the back end of a car, really roughed up. But getting those in immaculate condition at a reasonable price, not a greedy price, and they're only, I believe, I can't remember if they're 300 watt output, or if it's 3 or 6, no, 6, is it 600 output, 600 each channel, might be 600 watt each channel, I think, and yeah, 1.2 kilowatt when it's bridged. So you need some of those.
Now, will someone please tell me what's going on?
And they got a lot of fans on them, so they'd probably be noisy, so they have to be in another room. But they're very, very large. They're about, Uri 6290s is I think it's about the height of the CP mod. I think it's about that sort of height. The amplifier, yeah, it's about that height. It's about that U frame height. I forgot what that U frame is. I think that's 5, 6. I think it's either 5 or 6 U frame. And the other ones are a little bit smaller.
Simply, Genesis is life from lifelessness.
So it's something like that. Of course, you need the JBL Classic 4675. Awesome. You don't need this. You don't need all these JTR, RTs, whatever, these overrated speakers being talked about. They're too expensive. I'm sure they're probably good, but they're a bit overrated and overpriced. Where you can get some 4675s cheaper. The real thing, the real actual thing that was used to mix a movie on and play it back on. What do you think Return of the Jedi was mixed on? Little M&K speakers mixed on 4675s and played back on 4675s. So what they mixed there on that is then hopefully when CHX Cinema's designed and then tested and checked by the engineer afterwards, after it's been put all together, or checking it through the process, I'm guessing, as long as it meets requirements and noise and all that blah blah, and I suppose they don't say, oh, you can't have it this level. If they can do that, I guess, yeah, wow. Because it's like the THX system, or it's like holding a 15-inch bass driver against your chest, and you feel it, only you're feeling it coming a bit more further away, and it's doing that flawlessly. I can't understand why one guy had some 4675, had 3 of them in a basement, and yet he said so, they're like this and that. He even blew up the HF drivers, idiot. Totally connected them directly to the amplifier, no crossover. The most low frequency you could put through those is about 200 hertz with a what's called a wave, something called a wave tube or something. It's just a long tube, say like a bit of drainage pipe, yeah. And you put the compression driver down on the end, and so the sound's going to travel through, yeah. And what you get there, you get a max increase on the output. So if you can get down to 200 hertz, you can tune those bass drivers down a little bit more. Hence, lower lows, higher highs, less distortion, THX. But the long tubes are not very practical for cinema behind the screen because they'll be very long. I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if you could do it like in a circle sort of, so compression driver starts down this end like they did on some compression driver back in the 1950s or 60s or so, or I think maybe 40s, actually probably 1940s, where it goes around kind of like a snail sort of thing, and then comes out on the horn. So the waveform is traveling around, so they're, you know, but the speakers even back then were a bit low efficiency. Still high, but not as, yeah. If that application was any good, I thought it was still being used. But I guess you could try that, or just, yeah, long cylinder. I like to try that idea with a smaller JBL compression horn drivers I've got. Use a cylinder and see if I can maximise the frequency on the smaller JBL 2371 HF horns, and see if I can maximise the frequency output a little bit, even though it's a small compression driver. See if I can just increase it by just a little bit more, by just simply a little bit of wave the magic wand, so to speak. Just kind of like you put your hands round like that and make a sound. Oh, ooh, oh, oh, and just observe it on the RTA, and you can see the increase. It's like if you've got a small laptop and you want the sound to be a little bit louder or better. It's simple, just get some paper cups and glue them to the bloody where the speakers go, and glue some little cups to it, and it'll act like a horn. It'll have a honky sound, obviously, because there you've got to kind of equalise it, but it'll increase the sound a little bit louder. Well, red alert, red alert. God, this film is awesome.
Lasers on target. They're walking phases. Play shields.
Oh, wow. Oh, that directional bass. Wicked. Yeah. So, obviously, I've got the microphones there, so I've retuned it slightly. Because it's like, where to put the microphones? You know, the length of the room. Maybe 2/3 back, so to speak. If I'm back here with the microphones, I'm a little bit further than, I'm a little bit too far back, I guess. So I think I'll go a little bit more forward, so to speak. Pretend it's like a large cinema, but put the microphones just a little bit more forward. And of course, I'm using multi microphone, so I can turn one off. I can turn the left and right down, leave the centre on, or vice versa. Anyway, I can do what I want, do as I please, just to get the tuning. And then, of course, moving the microphone. I want to make something else that's pretty complicated. So someone else, if they want to try it, then knock yourself out, so to speak. Knock yourself out. You could put something going across the room, so then the microphone or microphones can move along it evenly. because when you're doing it with like that with your hand, you're going this way, that way, it's going all over the bloody place. You want to go straight, like dialing, looking for a frequency on a radio, and then you use the course, or the course changer, and then you use the fine tune, or you use the KC shifting. You adjust the frequency. You can see where it is. If it's a ham radio, you can see where, oh right, there's a station down, so I'll dial it down there, or you just use this and just scroll it right onto it straight away, because you can see the full band. Whereas on the typical on a CB radio, you've got to go channels, and then use the KC shift, the KC shift kilocycle, to turn it slightly plus or minus, because you've got frequencies typically on some CB radios where you get what's called a black hole. It's a frequency that goes over your head, and you got to use that to dial it out. Right now you hear that frequency, that sound, that channel broadcast, so you want to move the microphones up and down, so to speak, so it's zeroing in roughly where it's best at with the frequency coming with the pink noise, because then you think, right, that microphone's in a better position there. I can see the frequencies like all this, like it's not even it out, and then play it back. How does it sound and feel? And it's like, I think that's better than putting the microphones back here, because the bass and the build up or everything else in the room is still going to travel around the room. Just want to get a nice, so it doesn't sound too loud, harsh, and then you still got plenty of amplifier gain, dynamic range power, just to turn it up a little bit, but then just check a little bit of the tuning, because you don't want too much low end. You've got to make sure you got a nice, so you get that, yes, that's what I get, that's what I get, that's what I get. What are they kitties up to? Oh, I've got to feed my cats.